Watching Worldview Tube, a Brannon House television network.
The Tamara Scott Show. Tamara has served as the state director for one of America's largest pro-life, pro-family public policy organizations. In 2007, Tamara was named one of America's top 10 most influential kingmakers by the Religion News Association. Tamara has spent years proclaiming and defending the values of a Christian worldview that is the foundation of our constitutional republic. And now, here is your host, Tamara Scott.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Tamara Scott Show, where we help you live God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. And remember, we tell you, we discuss the headlines, we want you aware of them, so you better know how to plan, how to strategize, how to pray. But we don't want you to get caught up in them so that you become the P-R-E-Y, the prey. Because we learned in 2020, and before we talked about it, if whoever they are, those powers who oppose us, those powers who come against our liberties, our faith, our religious views, if they can cause you to be uncertain, fearful, then they can make you malleable. And God has a plan and a purpose for you. Don't let the barking dogs distract you off the path, as Louis L'Amour used to write about in one of his books. All right. So we're glad to talk to you about that each day on the show at noon. You can join us live on WVWTV.com. WVWTV.com. I have people ask me, how do we find you? Live every Monday through Friday. WVWTV.com. Just like you go to your local media or you go to another website, you'd come to WVWTV.com at noon Central Time. Then, of course, they're complimentary for 7 days, and I know that gets confusing for some of you. So Thomas is putting many of them on YouTube for you now, which I'm very pleased to have that happen. So some of them are available now on YouTube. And Thomas, if you want to pop up that, there it is right there, Worldview YouTube, Worldview Tube TV. Worldview Tube TV, and there you can find us there. And so, I'm getting a call myself. I didn't apparently silence my own phone. My apologies about that. But if you can go to Worldview Tube TV, you can follow along. Worldview Tube TV. You'll find us on social media, and you can follow along that way. And then, for those of you who appreciate all of the information, our guests are so incredible. You can go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. You will have access not just to our shows and our incredible guests, but every show on the network, as well as Brannon House's library. I mean, 36 plus years he's been in this, and speeches, presentations, documentaries, all available to you. So that is at worldviewtube.com/vault. A great deal for you at a very reasonable subscription fee, and then you don't have to worry about it once you learn how to navigate through that site. All right, joining me today is Hal Shurtleff. Hal Shurtleff, you may not know, but he was in the Supreme Court case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won when he sued, I believe it was the city of Boston, over their refusal to fly the Christian flag. They would fly other flags that weren't necessarily municipal or governmental. So our hats off there, because what he did there impacted many of us with our freedom of religion, and that with another case, I think Kennedy out of the West Coast helped remove, I think it was the lemon test that had plagued us for some decades. So hats off for his courage. But he also is the director and co-founder of Camp Constitution. And you can find more out about them at campconstitution.net. But today, being President's Day, I wanted somebody who could just take us through some of the facts, surprising facts, fun facts, a little bit entertaining as well. And Hal was brave enough to take me up on that invitation. Hal, thanks for joining us on the Tamara Scott Show today.
Well, thanks for having me. And you can see I have a few of my friends with me in the background here on what is now known as President's Day, although still officially George Washington's Day.
It is his birthday, absolutely. All right, so
February 22nd, actually.
Is 22nd is
Washington's birthday is February 22nd. Yeah.
But this was a day when we honored his birthday, and we used to honor Lincoln's birthday, and then we kind of just crammed them all together on President's Day, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I've got a couple headlines I need to go through. I don't know if you know John Fredericks radio.com. Traveling studio through Iowa last week, and so I had the honor of joining them on the bus hours. But a lot of the MAGA people who were calling in were very upset that Trump, ICE, had pulled out of Minnesota. Very angry that now anytime we went into a state, the rioters would just show up, angry, riot, and we would run. And I don't believe that's true. And so I did make the comment in response that if I've learned anything about President Trump, it is not to underestimate him. That when we hear a headline or we hear that something's happening, that he's usually making his next move on the chessboard while we're still discussing and processing what he just said. And so I don't think it was, I mean, we all want it cleaned up. We want the illegals out of this country who should not be here legally, the criminals certainly arrested and taken away so that we can have safety once again in our communities and our cities. But I don't think it was the terrible mark. And so I want to put up just very quickly, if I can, Logan, let's play the 22 seconds of Homan talking about some of their good work that they did while they were there.
In addition to taking public safety threats off the street, ICE here in this state have located 3,364 missing unaccompanied alien children. Children that the last administration lost and weren't even looking for. That's because of the leadership of President Trump, these children were located.
All right, and let's go to the I believe it's a White House website, the quote from Caroline Leavitt, press secretary. She says President Trump's common sense immigration and enforcement policies are delivering the public safety results the American people demanded, with more than 4,000 dangerous criminal illegal aliens already arrested in Minnesota since Operation Metro began. Democrats opened our borders and allowed vicious criminals, including murderers, rapists, gang members, and terrorists, to invade our communities. President Trump is reversing that horrific damage and removing threats from our country. At President Trump's direction, Tom Homan's commitment to draw down forces in Minneapolis today follows these achievements and the new unprecedented cooperation from state and local officials in Minnesota. Commitments like these from elected officials to work with the president and federal law enforcement produce tremendous outcomes that will help keep Americans safe. And I think that's what they had asked for from the get-go. If you will work with us, cooperate with us in removing dangerous criminals off the streets, we don't have to come in and have what we had in this surge. Hal, I know on your website you have written about this. You want to comment?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first off, what happened from 21 to 24 was deliberate, the opening the borders and letting as many in as possible. We already had a lot from over the years, and it was really a way to upset the political balance. And not only did they allow them in, they helped them, they transported them all over the country in various states. And the goal obviously was to tip the scale politically. Now, it may take a few years for some of these illegals to be able to vote, know what's going on or what have you. And that's the main reason. And I'm of the opinion that the murders that these people are committing, the crimes, the steal, the theft, to them, it's just a consequence. It's something that goes with the territory, and it's worth it. That's why very few of them will actually condemn. Although if you go back to the Wayback Machine, go to YouTube, and we've uploaded some videos, and other groups have done the same thing. You listen to guys like Chuck Schumer, not that long ago, 10, 15 years ago. Not only was he supporting getting rid of these folks, but even using the term illegal immigrant was the proper term to use because they broke the law. It is a misdemeanor to actually come in here illegally. Now, a visa expiration is a civil offense, but to come here without going through customs is illegal. It's 6 months in jail and a fine. If you're deported and come back in, it's a felony. But keep in mind, it's not just that one crime that many of these people, that one misdemeanor, but when they come here, if they're working, they've either stolen the Social Security number or are working under the table. Now, I'm not a big fan of IRS and taxes and all that, but if I have to pay taxes for the money I make, everybody else should be doing it as well. And so they have to go, they're under the table, they depress wages, they put a real strain on the infrastructure, our educations, our hospitals, and of course, a lot of them are driving illegally, and some of them don't know the rules of the road or are killing people. So it's not just all these poor people are coming in here. And one of the rebuttals I give to some of these leftists, they say, look, You say that the United States is a wicked, evil, racist country run by white supremacists, and it's irredeemably awful. Why do you want these poor migrants from third world countries coming in here to be exploited by these wicked people? They don't know how to answer that, you know. So we know the real reason why they're here. And I tell you what, if tomorrow it was decided that every illegal immigrant was voting Republican, the Democrats will demand that ICE agents not only enforce the law, but every one of them carry automatic weapons and shoot on sight. Maybe I'm being a little facetious here, but the things would change dramatically if it was the other way around. No question about it.
So I want to point people, Thomas, if you can go to the link there to the article at campconstitution.net. You've written about the tactics, the communist tactics being used by those
right.
who are rioting against. Do you want to just give us a brief overview of that?
It is an old tactic that was used by the communists in the United States over 100 years ago. Martin Luther King used it as well. Not only did he use it, but he spelled out the tactics in an article in the Saturday Evening Post in April of 65, where he said, of course, in those days, it was just to discredit the local police. But he said, get peaceful demonstrators, and peaceful is always in quotation marks, out in the streets, get the police or angry opponents, to fight them. Make sure there's plenty of media there to document what's going on. And of course, it's much easier now because everybody has their own camera with a cell phone. And then people see what's going on. They see the bull Connor putting the dogs and hoses on these poor people. And then people will demand federal legislation to remediate that. And that's just a twist on what was happening in Minneapolis. Make the case that these poor people are being exploited, being kidnapped, and being beaten and murdered. And so you get these people out in the streets that believe these ICE agents are fascists and neo Nazis. And then the rest is, the violence. Violence is the key. And they like to make martyrs as well. The left always does a good job. And in that article, I point out a book called The Whole of Their Lives by Benjamin Gitlow. It was reprinted back in the early 60s. And Benjamin Gitlow was a former communist. And he pointed out one of the tactics, they were having a rent strike, the local communists, and I think it was New York City. So on the street were some of the communists, opposing the rents. On the roofs of the buildings were other communists, unbeknownst to the communists below, and they were throwing debris with the goal of killing people or harming people. And that's when Gitlow decided, what, these communists are pretty rotten. There was another guy by the name of Manning Johnson. He was a black man, a communist, that was recruited by a so-called Christian pastor. A lot of course, the left had infiltrated the churches many, many years ago. It didn't just happen recently. And he was under the misunderstanding that only communists cared about black people, only white communists. He was trained in Moscow. He came back and realized that the communists hated black people. They just used them for cannon fodder for the revolution, and he went out to expose them. So again, it's an old tactic, and we can see it being played out time and time again. So the goal is violence. Now there's a lot of peaceful people out there, no question, but a lot of them aren't. And if I'm getting in the way, if my local cop pulls over a guy for speeding, I get out and I start throwing rocks at him or start swearing at him. I'm guilty of. I am. That's a crime in itself. They're doing. And I don't like getting pulled over for speeding tickets, but that's sort of the rules of the road. You don't interfere with the actions of a police officer, and if you do, you're subject to arrest. And well, if a policeman said, "Hey, don't get out of the car or pull the car over," I'm not going to pull it back and try to run somebody down. And that's what
Right.
happened.
Right. And so that brings me to our fun facts on presidents. Reminds me about the speeding ticket when we get into that discussion, because one of our presidents got a speeding ticket that will make people giggle. All right. So, and you've got the book, mentioned the pamphlet that was that was used back in 2020 during the height of the Black Lives Matter Antifa riots. The copies were going for $200. You have now a copy of that
Oh,
pamphlet.
yes. Yeah, it's called "And Not a Shot Is Fired." It was written by a Czechoslovakian communist. It was actually used by communists around the world, how to overtake a country without a violent revolution. I mean, there might be some casualties, but and yeah, so we put it back in print. I had a handful of copies that were published back in 1998. A lot of patriotic organizations reprinted these just to show communist tactics. And
Okay.
it was selling, not just listed, selling for over $200. I couldn't believe it. So a friend of mine, he had about 10 of them. I said, "Oh wow, this is all great! What a great donation to Camp Constitution." So we put it back in print, and we're not selling them for nearly. I think we're selling for $20 a
$20.
piece. But yeah,
$20.
and it gives you an idea of the tactics that they use. And this other guy, Gramsci, he's not mentioned in this book, Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci was an Italian communist. He died in prison during the 30s under Mussolini. And he wrote a book. I can't remember the name of it. By the way, Bill Clinton was very familiar with Gramsci. He said, take over the institutions. You don't have to have a violent revolution. You don't have to put everybody in concentration camps. If you take over the institutions, look at the NFL. Here's an example. Now, I don't know if Roger Goodell's a commie, but he's promoting an agenda that's anti-American. You could say that that institute's been taken over by the deep state types. You look at other entities; they don't
Ed-
have to be Communist Party members, but they're promoting an anti-American agenda, and that's an
Education
example
is
of
a great example.
look at the government schools, for example.
Yep. Very good.
Uh,
All right. So that is, if you go to that campconstitution.net, if you do campconstitution.net, if you do a search for Hal Shurtleff, Shurtleff, and campconstitution.net, it will show you some of his writings. And you just scroll down to you see Understanding Minneapolis. Understanding Minneapolis is on down the page, February 2nd, 2026. And you'll have to scroll down a little bit further, Thomas. Thank you for that. And then there is a link. When you get to that, there's a link on that pamphlet where you can order that pamphlet. I always hate to tell you all to do that before I get mine ordered because I don't want them to run out before I get mine. But there you go, right there, Thomas. There, that's the link right there. So thank you so much, where you all can order that pamphlet, and there you are, right there. So thank you so much for making that available. This is another reason I love having Hal on the show, talking to him. He always has book recommendations, and every so often, if you follow him on social media, they'll sell off part of their library, and you can get some great books that you know are credible. If he's had them in his library, you know they're credible. We blew right past our first break. We'll go to that break now. We'll be right back with Hal Shurtleff. Stay tuned. Tamara Scott.
Joyce. With Brandon House.
I need to tell you about our Bella Grace. The slender little sachet has the elixir with the collagen, astaxanthin, and cat's paw. In 2022, got an award for helping with cognitive function, and in 2023, in the sports arena for active ingredients, nutrition, and format. But the best is what we hear from so many of you. You have noticed better joint health, improved mobility, less eye strain and fatigue, helping with computer vision syndrome, visual acuity, depth perception, alleviating dry eyes, but also helping with your immunity, your stress management, endurance, less fatigue overall, not just eye fatigue, muscle recovery, mental clarity, focus, and gut health. Then there's the fun list. The firmer, smoother skin texture, fewer fine lines and wrinkles, improved skin elasticity, decreased age spots, more even skin tone, improved skin hydration, reduced oxidative stress, healthier nails, less cellulite, hair health, better sleep. Who wouldn't want any of those? Call them beauty items if you wish, but who doesn't want to feel a little bit better or more confident when you're going to present in the public square, when you're going to speak at a city council? And who just doesn't want to feel a little healthier? Maybe they're just byproducts of being healthier. More information at tamara.bellagraceglobal.com, tamara.bellagraceglobal.com. All right, Hal Shurtleff is my guest today. It is President's Day. We talked about Valentine's last week. I hope you had a wonderful Valentine's over the weekend. But as we told you, it's not just when Hallmark says to let those around you know you love them. It is any day of the year. And I will say, yes, my husband got me my traditional 4 pieces of candy. It's all I ever want. Well, I may want more, but this is good. I don't want a big amount of chocolates. And they're like less than $2 at those little dollar stores, but it's an American company. It's Elmer's chocolate. I get nothing back for telling you this. It's just our little thing. It is just enough to say, love ya. And we're on our way, right? So, hope you had a great Valentine's. We love because he first loved us. Jesus Christ, the Lord, is giving himself for us. God giving his own begotten son. We love because he first loved us. All right, tracking with Hal. We're talking about President's Day. Hal, you always have fun facts. Let's hit it. Where do you want to start on President's Day 2026?
Well, backtrack, Val. I posted an article from the American Minute, Bill Federer, on the real Valentine's, who was a Christian martyr, and so it's really a great story. But George Washington is my favorite president. I think I'm not the only one that believes that. In fact, some years ago, we had one of our camp T-shirts had a picture of Washington and said "Miss me yet," you know. And I believe Washington to be the greatest man that was probably ever born on the United States, what became the United States. And he was just an incredible human being, a devout Christian, and he put everything on the line. He put his fortune on the line, and not only did in war, but also at the convention, the Constitutional Convention, he was known as the indispensable man. And James Madison said that, I think that's the moniker he gave. Without him, they probably wouldn't have been a convention. The fact that he attended gave it credibility. And there are two things too. You might be loved by your friends and hated by your enemies, but sometimes the enemies respect and admire you. Now, when George Washington stepped down after 8 years, two 4-year terms, King George III heard about this, and he said, if that's the case, he's the greatest man in the world. Who has ever, in the history of mankind, who willingly steps down from power? They either die or overthrown, or are so sick that they can't last anymore. Also, Frederick the Great heard about his campaign in New York. No, I'm sorry, Frederick, when he resigned his commission, here he was commander of the forces of the Continental Army, and he resigned willingly. I mean, he had the army. He could have become the dictator of the United States. And when he resigned, that's when Frederick the Great said, if he did resign, then he's the greatest man that ever lived, because history doesn't have people resigning their commissions, especially when you've just won. You've beaten the most powerful nation in the world, and you've got an army in the field, and you decide, hey, I'm just going to go back to the farm. So those two things are just remarkable about him. And I visited Mount Vernon about 20 years ago, and there's the country of Belgium actually placed a wreath. And I thought, here he has been dead for a long. He died in 1799, and his memory is still honored. And by the way, when he died, the British Navy had fired a salute in his honor. So that speaks a lot about him. And the fact that his farewell address used to be memorized by school children around the country. And there were a couple of wonderful takeaways from that. Now, this farewell address wasn't actually a speech that he gave. It was something written, and it was presented to Congress. And we can go to our website. We sell copies, but we have them as a free download too on our website, campconstitution.net. But there was a few things he said there. First, he said, have nothing to do with permanent foreign entanglements. And the other one, he said that morality and religion are indispensable. Basically, you can't be a patriot without morality and, I'm paraphrasing, and religion. And in those days, the word religion was synonymous with Christianity. Today, it has a different and even a negative connotation. But back then, when you said religion, it was just synonymous with Christianity. And
Yep.
I want to recommend a few books. One of the books is called Homes and Libraries of the Presidents by William Clotworthy. He was the censor for Saturday Night Live for the original show for a number of years. And I think there's about 88 different places he met. Now, this was published in 2004. So since then, there's been a George W. Library and a Clinton Library and an Obama Library. And I'm sure there'll be a Trump Library at some point. but there's also a lot of historical besides libraries, which and I've had the chance again. I've had the opportunity to visit a number of them, and I've actually corresponded with him in '04 when I discovered the James Garfield's log cabin. He was born in Ohio, just a little place outside of Cleveland. Now his homestead's in Mentor, Ohio, but you can actually beat it's a beautiful house. And Garfield was the last of the log cabin born presidents, and the particular place was a replica of the original site of the log cabin. And Clotworthy didn't know about it, so I was able to send him a few postcards. And I don't think he ever updated the book. He only died recently. He died in 21 to the age of 95, but I don't think he ever updated the book. He said he was going to. Um, but there's just so many wonderful facts and stories. And Garfield was the only ordained minister who became president. Now, he served in the Civil War as an officer, ran for Congress, and but he was an ordained minister. And what brought him to notoriety in the region was his defense of creationism. He was debating people who have been suckered by Darwin, and that really led him into political prominence. And he was also the first left-handed president too. And if fellow lefties who kind of enjoy, although Bill Clinton was a left-handed too, so you get the good with the bad, right? And and of course he was assassinated very, very tragically. And but this has some great now. I just interesting. I'm a member of the Franklin Pierce Brigade. Franklin Pierce was a president. He was from New Hampshire. I think he was the only president from New Hampshire, and he has two home with his birthplace and then his homestead, which is in Concord, New Hampshire, about 45 minutes from me. And I took some young people from our camp. It was the last day of camp. On the way home, we stopped there, and I became one of the members of the Pierce Brigade. But this is a really fascinating story about Frank, and he's a very tragic figure because after he got the nomination, he had won the presidency, and he was visiting relatives in Massachusetts with his wife, and he was on a train, and these were some early trains. Anyway, there was a freak accident, and a piece of glass from the window cut his little boy's son's head right clean off, and the poor wife, the head landed on the wife, and so that's not really a fun fact; it's a tragic fact. But some of you people may have watched the movie National Treasure, the first one, and in the movie there was a clue. They were trying to find this treasure. I guess that the Masons had over the thousands of years accumulated, and there was a number of clues. And one of the clues was in the Resolute desk, which is the desk that's in the White House. I think Trump may have it in storage. I'm not sure. Maybe it's being refurbished. But the Resolute was a British ice cutter that was making its way to the Arctic along with some others, and it had a metal or steel bow in order to go through the ice. Well, the captain had to abandon it, couldn't get it out of the ice, and he went back to England. And the crew survived, but he was court-martialed. The ship itself went adrift, and it was found by a whaling American whaling ship, and they brought it to Connecticut, New London, Connecticut, and Franklin Pierce ordered the purchase of it for $40,000, and as a gesture of goodwill, had it outfitted, repaired, and then brought to England. And Queen Victoria accepted it. The ship was put back in commission, and it was decommissioned in 1876. And the Queen had some of the wood from the ship turned into furniture or made into furniture, including the Resolute desk. And she presented it to President Hayes in 1876. And that's the story of the Resolute desk, which I think is a fascinating story, from a ship. Now, Hayes, Ohio president, he was the first one to call his wife the First Lady. It's very interesting. And, ever since then, the wives of presidents have been known as First Ladies. I got a chance to visit his homestead as well. And he was born in Ohio, Delaware, Ohio. And the birthplace is now a convenience store, a gas station. I think there's a little marker commemorating he was born there. But then one of my favorite presidents is Calvin Coolidge.
Hold on for the next one, because you've got to go to break. We'll be right back after this with with House Shirt Love. Stay tuned. We're talking about some of the fun facts you don't hear. It's a great way to talk to your kids about the history of our nation, about our presidents. It doesn't have to be treachery. It doesn't have to be, heaviness. Talk to your kids about this. And I will tell you, some of the websites I have on our Tamara Scott Show Facebook page showed a little bit of bias as far as I was concerned. So it's a great chance for you to talk about with your kids about what you think, what you don't think, what you're buying and what you're not buying, and some of the bias that's out there. But stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you like drinking toxins that could cause cancer, inflammation, and all kinds of other autoimmune diseases? Of course you don't. Well, much of our water in America is full of toxins. That's a proven fact. WorldviewWater.net. WorldviewWater.net is your solution so that you can drink good, clean water. In fact, I give it to all my 3 fur babies, all my 3 dogs. I have one under my kitchen sink, one of these filters, as well as on my shower. WorldviewWater.net.
This is our new NutraSwish, Numi NutraSwish. You can find more information at Numi, neumi.com/TTSS. neumi.com/TTSS, one of the products we offer because you all have different preferences and respond differently to different items. So this is our lavender. It's for ladies anywhere along your journey. No hormones in it, but if you're taking a hormonal supplement, you might want to check with your doctor. The blue is for anyone over the age of 18. It has glutathione, which is a antioxidant, helps with over 400 cellular functions, and it helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, one of those terms we learned after 2020, and it helps detox glyphosate. The good glutathione helps detox glyphosate. Glyphosate is found in ag chemicals or lawn chemicals, and some are very concerned about possible links to cancers, HPVs, and diabetes. But the blue bottle, the glutathione, helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, and glyphosate. Then there's the mango-colored bottle you see on your screen. Numi Neuro helps with your mind, your memory, and your focus. Now, again, after 2020, we heard something about brain fog, a term we'd not heard before. Whether it's from a virus or a vaccine, many have found relief, a little help, with Numi Neuro, the mango-colored bottle. When used with the blue bottle, it is so positive that the American Brain Council wrote about it, and it looked like an endorsement. Though we're told they don't write endorsements, it was simply a positive review of what they saw. You can find more information at Numi, neumi.com/TTSS, neumi.com/TTSS for the Tamara Scott Show. Why? Because we want you feeling your best. And when you use that TTSS link, you help us be our best. All right, thanks for staying tuned with us. Hal Shurtleff is my guest today from Camp Constitution. He is the director and co-founder of Camp Constitution. You can find them at campconstitution.net. Hal, I hear you're going to start into President Coolidge. So before you go to Coolidge, I'm going to bounce back a couple of presidents, and here's the speeding ticket. I'd like to be quizzed on here, so I won't quiz you. But the first president to get a speeding ticket was the 18th president of the United States, Ulysses S. Grant, who was given a $20, which was quite high for the day, I think, speeding ticket for riding his horse and buggy too fast down a street in Washington, D.C.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that one.
That is from National Geographic for Kids. So there you go.
Oh, that's interesting. I visited his. There's 3 sites that he has. It's his birthplace. He was born in Ohio, right on the river, right on the Ohio River. He died in a little cottage in Saratoga Springs, New York. He was in the process of writing his autobiography, and he didn't quite finish it, and he died. And you can visit that Grant's Cottage, it's called. It was owned by one of the railroad men. I forget his name, one of the railroad magnates that he was working for. And it abuts a prison. So you go to the place, and if it's a nice weather, you can see the prison inmates playing a game of basketball as you're visiting Grant. And the day when he died, they stopped the clock on the mantle at the time he died, and it's still there. Back, I think he died in 1885, 1884, somewhere around there. And so Yeah. So before I get to Coolidge, I don't want to forget. I want to. We discussed this off the air. George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior, which you can find probably anywhere online. It's a very brief little booklet. He did this when he was 14 years of age, and I just want to share a couple of these little maxims. And he actually codified this. This was something that was originally in French, and he just sort of, I don't know, changed it. But it really shows his character. And every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those that are present. When in company, put not your hands to any part of the body not usually discovered. There's a lot of musicians out there that should take this advice, or performers. Show nothing to your friend that may affright him. In the presence of others, sing not to yourself or with a humming noise, nor drum with your feet or fingers. If you cough, sneeze, or sigh, or yawn, do not loud, but privately, and speak not in your yawning. Put your handkerchief or hand before your face and turn aside. There's nothing annoys me when people talk and they're yawning. Why don't you yawn first and then speak? I can't understand you. I call it yawn talking. And I tell my wife, no yawn talking, finish, yawn first and then speak afterwards. But Calvin Coolidge, now he was born in Vermont, in the town of Plymouth, Vermont, and he cut his political teeth in Massachusetts. He moved to Massachusetts. He ran for governor. He was a state senator, I think state rep. He was a member of the town government where he lived. And then when he was governor of Massachusetts, there was a police strike in Boston, and he broke the strike, and that gave him national prominence. And so he was nominated for Warren Harding's vice president. Harding died in office, and Coolidge served at that term, and then he won another term. Our week-long camp, isn't too far from the Coolidge homestead in Plymouth, Vermont. It's about an hour drive from where our camp is, and so we've taken field trips to his beautiful. It's the house where he lived. There's a general store that his father owned, and the church that he attended. We're all in this little. It's really a state-owned park, and when Harding died, he was on vacation in Vermont, and his father swore him in as president of the United States. He was a justice of the peace, and so I think that's the first time that a father swore his son in to become president. Although there was some issue whether or not it was constitutional, so he took another oath when he got back to D.C. But there's been so many stories about Calvin Coolidge. He was known as Silent Cal, and there was one of the storytellers at the homestead there, and he said to me that most of the stories are true that you've heard about him, and I want to share a couple. One of my favorites is that his wife was ill one morning, and she didn't go to church, and the church was right across the street. And he came back, and again, he's known as Silent Cal. He comes back from church, and the wife said, "How was the sermon?" He said, "Good." "What did the preacher preach about?" And he said, "Sin." "What did he have to say about it?" "He was agin it." And there's another story of some of his friends from Vermont were visiting the White House, and these people were sort of down to earth. They didn't really know the customs of the White House dinner table, and one of them just suggested, "We'll just follow Cal's lead." And so Calvin comes in and shakes everyone's hand and sits down, and he gets the napkin, and he does this, and everybody does the same thing and tucks it in. And then he gets a bowl that's on the table, and he pulls it, and everybody grabs a bowl. And okay, then he pours milk into the bowl, and the people passing the pitcher and putting milk into the bowl. Then he puts the bowl on the floor to give to the cat. You see, so I thought that was pretty funny. And then there was at a time where some ladies were visiting the White House. I don't know, it was a ladies group. I'm not sure what type of group it was. And one of the women said, "We have a bet that you won't say more than 3 words." And he said, "You lose." That was the story. So,
Done.
um,
Done. Yeah. So
yeah,
cat was it the Cool Cat Coolidge is the name that I remember for him. Cool Cat Coolidge.
yeah, yeah.
And so you,
His
you
wife
mentioned
was quite elegant. You see pictures of portraits of her. She was quite an elegant lady. You think of some homespun country gal, but she was a very elegant woman.
Yeah,
Florence. And he didn't.
I
He could have served. He could have ran again, but he decided not to. And but again, he was under. People will say to me, "Well, what did he ever do?" I said, "Exactly. You know, like a
right.
president is supposed to do all kinds of things." He retired the national debt. He kept us out of war, and because they love wars. You know, these a lot of these people have been wanting wars for the longest time. And that, to me, is a major accomplishment. The fact that he retired the national debt. And you say the business of America is business. And he realized that his goal wasn't to be a proactive, but to be a negative. The word negative it doesn't mean that you're doing something bad. It just means that government is not there to advance something, but to punish evildoers. You know, so you do something negative, but to do positive things means you try to. That's what the term progressive. You know, you're advancing, giving more power to the federal government, and that wasn't his prerogative. Um,
And to
let's see, I
your
made a
point,
little list here. Uh,
we always
uh,
we always talk about wanting less government. We want less government, and then we celebrate any small bill that U.S. senators, congressional members, state legislators, they all want to tell us what they've done, which is more government. So to your point, good for him that he did not. And so, do you have anything more on Coolidge, or can I slip something in about Harding?
you can slip something about Harding. Yeah.
So this is from the website called, I think it's just history.com. And the author is Jesse Greenspan. I don't know him, but I would tell you he leans differently than I do politically because he was very generous on Obama and Biden and not so, and Clinton never said any of the things that we could have heard from any of those folks. But here on Harding, who happens to be a Republican, here's what he said about Harding. Let me see if I can find it again. Prior to taking office, Harding wrote a series of lurid love letters to his mistress, the wife of one of his best friends. That's what he says about Harding. Nothing
That
about
never happened.
nothing about a blue dress, nothing about the numbers of women who came forward with Bill Clinton, nothing about Biden's and his unscrupulous behavior, the concerns, whether it's with even his own daughter. Nothing about, if you wanted to go there, then go there. But this author went there with one that can no longer rebut for himself, who
Well,
happened to be Republican.
well,
And
what's
kept it.
fascinating is that it never happened. The woman did come out and say, "Oh yeah, I had a love affair and I have all these letters." She never produced one letter at all.
Oh, really?
You know, so oh yeah, yeah. So there's a lots of things that would be said. I mean, I can say anything I want. I can say, "Oh, Hillary and
Great.
I, we know each other in college. You know, we did this with." No, there's no evidence of that. So that never happened. Yeah. So
So
there's a lot of misinformation.
the affair never even happened?
It never happened. No, he never even had an affair. There's never no evidence. They said that he actually yeah, she had an abortion, but that's just it never happened. Yeah, it's just
Never.
amazing some of the misinformation. He gets a lot of. See, another. Most of the Republicans up to Harding were big progressives. Teddy Roosevelt, they wanted more government. Even Howard Taft, although to his credit, he was against the Federal Reserve Bank, and he later became a Supreme Court justice. Um, but no, so that's why there was so much nasty things written about him, and he died. And of course, you can't defend yourself in your death. But if he's got all these lurid love letters, there should be some available. But there aren't any, you know.
Well, and if you're going to
So
mention those with no proof, you'd think you'd mention the ones that are in congressional record in the in the presidency of somebody's
exactly. We also
right?
have to realize that we're all sinners saved by the grace of God. So these men weren't. There were some very bad men and some very good men, and some very great men. You know, so. And
Yeah.
the office of presidency wasn't, by the way, one of the things that annoys me when I hear the president's the most powerful man in the free world. That's not his job description. He's not supposed to be. Yes, we may be the most powerful country, but the idea that we're not just voting for him as president, we're voting for the most powerful man in the free world. I really dislike when I hear people say that because that's not part of his job description.
And if we'd get back to what we're supposed to be with reining in like the limitations of government, then they wouldn't be able to impact us, change the stock markets with one tweet. Or so that's what
That's
we need
right.
to get back. I agree. We've got to go to our third and final break. We'll be right back. Hal Shurtleff is
All
our
right.
guest. We're talking about some of those surprising facts you don't hear very often, and as we just learned, falsehoods as well on some of our presidents. Stay tuned.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
All right. Joining me is Hal Shurtleff. I almost called you Dr. Hal Shurtleff. Hal Shurtleff, Camp Constitution, campconstitution.net. We're just running through some of our president's surprising facts you may or may not know. Hal, would you like to go in these last 8 minutes?
Well, you know something, since we refuted this misinformation about Harding, I'd like to address Jefferson before I discuss my second favorite president, John Adams. Thomas Jefferson was accused of having an affair with one of his slaves, a Sally Hemings, and having illegitimate children by her. That's another lie. It never happened. It's most likely that it was one of his nephews, that he was known to go into the slave quarters and sort of party with the slaves and what have you. And so there's DNA that has some similarity, but he was not. Said that Jefferson, his wife died, Martha, at a young age, and he pledged to her that he would not have another. He would never remarry, or that was it. That would never have another a wife, or and he admitted years later that he did make an overture to a married woman before he met Martha, and so he confessed to that. But he never had an affair with Sally Hemings. And of course, a lot of people, and I think we're all guilty of this to some extent, we want to believe the things that we don't want to believe, even if it's true, and it's stuff that we want to believe. You want to believe the worst of people you dislike, and you want to believe the best of people you like. But I think we have to be historically accurate about it. And there were a lot of people that the last 50 years has been to denounce the founding fathers. And so this is, he wrote the Declaration of Independence, but look what a hypocrite he was, and so forth and so on. And so I guess it's important to bring up. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because even being at his home, I think they've kind of changed things around, and they talk about it. They really make a big deal about how they're trying to adapt and discuss it so carefully. So you're saying he did not have any affair?
Yes, no, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah, it was 1998. They came out with, and a lot of people, they've embraced this notion that he was, and his descendants. Obviously, it helped, maybe benefits them. But there was another study done, I think, in 2014 that said no, it's most likely a nephew. It's not Jefferson.
And Sally would have been a half sister to his wife, correct?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I know she was what they call an octroon. She was 1/8 white. 1/8 black, but she was still considered a slave.
So we should go back and true either then, because that's what they talked to us about the last time I went through that home. So we should go back and see if that's true as well, because you could see
to the home. Yeah, I've also been to Poplar Village, the Poplar. What's it called? It's near Liberty University. It was like he inherited, and it was like a summer home for him. And there they played it straight. They didn't go into any of this revisionist history. So
interesting. So even if you've been to the home of Thomas Jefferson, like we were, you could have gotten wrong information. Think about that. And we could tell on some of it that it was so leftist, so woke. We could tell that by some of what they were saying. But it's interesting that, and I didn't know to refute any of it, so, and I'm not probably going to unless I have the facts right in front of me. But that is interesting to hear. It makes us, again, when I said on the Facebook post to all of you, talk to your kids, figure out what is truthful fact, what is false, and talk to your kids. I didn't even think about that one, Hal. So thank you for bringing that up. Now I'll do our own research.
Jefferson and Adams, John Adams, both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826. And I think the last words was of Adams, who said Jefferson lives. And of course, Jefferson had died a few hours earlier. They had a falling out, but they, thanks to John Adams' wife, Abigail, they kind of patched it. They never saw each other again, but they had a correspondence, and a very lengthy correspondence. So it was amazing. They both died on the same day, July 50th anniversary of our country. And if you you can visit the John Adams homestead. There's actually 3 buildings, and they're all in Quincy, Massachusetts. It's the birthplace and his childhood home, which is right next to it. It's also, you get 2 for the price of 1 because you get his son, John Quincy Adams, as well. And then a place called Peacedale. While he was president, he's only served 1 term. His wife, who hated Washington, D.C., she couldn't wait to get out of there, because it was a big swamp. It hasn't changed much, right? So she ends up going, and she bought the best home in the town of Quincy, or city now, and she had it furbished. So here's John, after 4 years. It was not a very good, he had a grueling experience, and he has this beautiful house, and in the back is his library. It's a separate building, and it's a beautiful library. And now John Quincy Adams, now they were the first father and son team. There's been, of course, a couple of, the other father and son team with the Bushes. And John Quincy Adams defended the people on the Amistad. These were free blacks that were kidnapped and were going to be sold into slavery. And the ship came into New London, Connecticut. And John Quincy Adams argued the case to the Supreme Court and won their freedom. And he became friends with the man, I think it was pronounced Cinque. He was sort of the leader. And in this library is a Bible in that language of that country that was presented to John Quincy Adams by Cinque. And the movie Amistad, usually Hollywood makes a big mess of things, but it's I would recommend it. It's a really pretty good movie. And it just shows that, John Quincy Adams was the only president to serve in Congress after he got out of the presidency. And he served up until the day he died. In fact, he died in his chair in D.C., and he was an ardent anti-slaver. And it was a point that he had always brought up, and they even had a gag order against him, but he died in, I think, 1848. And he was at the age of 16, he was our ambassador to Russia under John, just before we even won our independence. And he spoke fluent Russian, and just an incredible individual.
So
a very decent man.
In fairness, Jesse Greenspan, the man I said had written the other facts that seemed a little bit left-leaning, he did mention John Quincy Adams, after leaving the White House, had argued the famous Supreme Court case that freed the captive Africans who had rebelled aboard the Amistad slave ship. So there you go.
Yep.
Good for him. All right, so we have just a couple minutes left. Actually, we are right at our closing. I'll let you give closing remarks to our viewers, and I thank you for coming on with us today. Hal Shurtleff, campconstitution.net is where all of you can find a lot of the writings, a lot of the information, and you can also find about their activities, their camps, their retreats, where you can go and learn right there in real time, in person. Hal, say goodbye to our guest.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure, and God bless you.
Well, we thank you all the time for sharing your fun facts, your information. And like I said, there's always a book list I walk away with anytime I have a conversation with you. So thank you for taking time out for us. Thanks for all the work that you do. To our viewers, many states are under siege. The Article 5 proponents pushing a risky constitutional convention, call it convention of states, whatever you like, same thing, same risk of opening up our Constitution to be revamped or totally replaced, is under siege right now in South Dakota, Iowa, Idaho, and Ohio. And we're hearing very concerning things, and at least it's honest perhaps, as they are supposedly admitting to one of our guests who joined us last week that they are no longer going to pursue reigning in government, cutting spending, or even cutting entitlements. Think about that. That was one of two of the three reasons they brought up was reining in spending, cutting spending, reining in federal government. And they're no longer pursuing it, but they're still pursuing a convention, which leads to what I've said to you. It really doesn't matter. George Washington, who we talked about, Hal's favorite president, said that he, in his day, opposed a convention. He saw absolutely no remedy in it, in their arguments. All he saw was in their passions to alarm the fears of others. And it's the same today. No remedy, nothing wrong with the Constitution, just causing fear among the people to get them to open up that Constitution. You need to ask yourself why, in today's mixed political climate of communists, as we talked about in this show, who would definitely show up, of globalist, WEF, WHO, organizations outside this nation who would be coming in for influence. And if you're worried about corruption in Congress, imagine at a one-time convention, though Santorum says he wants one every 5 years. But you would have no accountability because they have total sovereignty as a delegate, though we don't know how they're selected. You can see the many concerns. I need to stop there. We'll be back with Dennis Behrend tomorrow as we tell you live boldly, love better, laugh bigger, be encouraged, but never be complacent.